Hi guys, welcome to another video. Once again I want to use TryAcme to explain and demo a very recent vulnerability that came out uh, as a 0-day called Spring4Shell. This vulnerability affects the so-called Spring framework that is written in Java and affects basically two components, one called Spring Cloud Functions and another one called Spring Core. The so-called Spring4Shell vulnerability affects this latter element, and there's a lot of confusion about the actual impact of this problem, but uh, here we can go through some additional explanations to understand it better. So I would recommend to read up on this background documentation in order to understand better the vulnerability of what it entails. Basically, there was a former vulnerability that was developed under the CVE 2010-1622, and recently a new vulnerability was discovered that goes around these patches. So basically, the Spring4Shell vulnerability forces the application to write a malicious JSP file to the web server, and this web shell can get executed to get remote command execution on the target. The good news about this vulnerability is that its impact is quite limited because it only affects Spring Core earlier than version 5.2 and also these additional versions. So the vulnerability only works with Java Development Kit 9 and later, a vulnerable version of the Spring framework, Apache Tomcat running, and also a dependency on these two libraries here. So once again, I would recommend to read up on the stuff before you start running the machine. And now let's try and go through this demonstration. And so let's start the machine. I'm gonna personally use a VPN connection to run this machine. Okay, so I connected to the VPN with TryAcme, and now that I did, I received an IP address. Once you read up on this, you can click here. But now let's move to the practical exploitation. I will download these test files here. And uncompress the archive. I'll move this file around to the virtual machine here. So this is the exploit we're going to use. So we can now visit the website. So this shows nothing but the construction page, basically. One thing I always do is to try and find this. This is not the case. Now, reading up on the explanation here, check the source code of this website. You see that the action is a slash. So the target URL will be this one. So this URL is vulnerable to the exploit. So let's now try and use the exploit we copied over to the machine to exploit it. So you see that we have uploaded the shell to the web server, and we should have remote command execution on it. You see we are root because the service Tomcat is run as root, which is a big deal, of course, because that's a bad thing. At this point, I'm going to try and use the remote command execution we obtained to get a reverse shell on my calling machine. For this, I need to know my IP address, which is always this one. Let's see if this command can give us a reverse shell. I don't think it worked. So after a series of wrong attempts, I was finally able to get a shell. The way I did it was to create an elf shell. an executable with MSF variant like this. Then I uploaded it to the server with wget, I made it executable, and I ran it. And now I have a shell on the machine. Now I'm going to turn it into an interactive shell. There you go. Now, if we go to the root directory, we can see the flag. I'm not going to show you, but that's the command I would run. And that's it for this room. That was a lot of fun. It took me a while, but I figured it out. Bye.